Mrs. Moody became Wimbledon Ladies Champion for the 8th time.
I'm very happy to have won, but I feel awfully sorry that Miss Jacobs' injury kept her from playing her game in the second set.
Night-time next Monday at 2. Wild West action and high adventure in Rio Conchas.
How much you think it is worth?
About 100 American dollars apiece.
And at 4, 60 Minutes.
I'm Mike Wallace. I'm Morley Safer. I'm Harry Reasoner. I'm Ed Bradley.
I'm Diane Sawyer.
The 60 Minutes team bring you gripping true-life film reports in a new series following Rio Conchas. Next Monday's nighttime movie at 2 on Thames.
Stay with us as we join David Cass and the rest of the team at ITN for the early morning news.
New enriched oil of Ulay. Discover a younger-looking you.
Jack Mix in full effect. More hot hits. Jack Mix in full effect, the new album from Mirage. Album, cassette or compact disc out now.
For the price of a stamp, your business employs Britain's largest delivery network all night.
Really cats and dogs. I don't mind the cats.
Royal Mail. By air, by land, by night, by hand.
Head and Shoulders. I didn't know you had dandruff. Shh. I don't.
Head and Shoulders?
I didn't know you had dandruff.
I don't.
Tests prove it. With ordinary medicated shampoo, dandruff can still be there. But with Head and Shoulders used regularly, it's completely clear.
Head and Shoulders? I didn't know you had dandruff. I don't.
So don't have dandruff. Have great-looking hair.
The French may, on occasions, find some of our ways a little confusing. But when it comes to fruit yogurt, you can always tell it's Nouvelle. Nouvelle from Chambourcy.
The tricks women have tried to get bachelor boy Cliff Richard to the altar. Part 3 of Johnny Briggs' story. Last chance to save £5 on a pair of sunglasses in TV Times this week.
Last month's ITV Telethon was an amazing success with over £22 million pledged all around the country. And it's not too late to make a donation. Here's how you do it. You can give money to Telethon at any high street bank, most building societies, through Transcash at your local post office, or directly through Girobank. Don't forget, Telethon 88 means hundreds of charities benefit directly from your generosity.
Nighttime action for Thursday. At 2, a young cab driver is under siege in Die Laughing.
Get him, Mr. Buck. Here's my monkey. Now I'm a murderer on the front page.
Die Laughing. Nighttime for Thursday at 2 on Thames.
Now we go over to ITN for the early morning news. It's 2 minutes past 5.
Secrets reforms are liberal, says the Home Secretary. His critics say they're repressive. Good morning, it's just after 5 o'clock on Thursday, the 30th of June. Welcome to the morning news from ITN. The Home Secretary, Mr. Hurd's white paper on reform of the Official Secrets Act has had a mixed reception. Some on the Labour side agreed with him that the proposals were liberal. Some conservative backbenchers say the law is still going to be repressive. One other headline, the world heavyweight boxing champion Mike Tyson has said he is through with the fight game. Also in this programme, allegations of bribe-taking in the American Defense Department, a special report in ITN's World News. And from American television, saved from death row, the man who murdered when he was 15. He owes his life to the Supreme Court. First, though, the government's proposed changes to the Official Secrets Act. Although the reforms announced yesterday went further than many had expected, there's been fierce criticism as well. Roy Hattersley for Labour said the white paper hardened up the secrecy laws. Richard Shepherd, the Conservative MP whose own information bill was defeated by a 3-line whip, called the new measures very repressive indeed. But the Home Secretary, Douglas Hurd, said the reforms would make the public more information on national security than ever before. They do away with the controversial catch-all Section 2 of the Official Secrets Act and list 6 categories of protected information. In the first 3, defence, intelligence and international relations, the prosecution will have to prove that harm has been done. In the other 3 areas, information from other governments, information useful to criminals, and information from phone tapping, it'll be assumed that harm has been done by a leak.
The proposals produced by Douglas Hurd certainly seemed more liberal than predicted. But they have not convinced all of his critics, even in his own party.
One of the most amazing results of this white paper is, of course, if Douglas had stood up in the Canadian Parliament, which is very similar to our own, same institutions and often the same stock of people, Australian Parliament, or even in the United States, he'd have been howled out. No one would have given him a second's piece.
Clive Ponting, acquitted by a jury after successfully claiming he leaked the Falkland War secrets in the public interest, says that under the new proposals, he would have been sent down. Newspaper editors point to other consequences.
If, for example, Terry Wogan's telephone was tapped in mistake for another Wogan who was thought to be an IRA terrorist, we couldn't even report that story in this legislation.
It was a statement which hardened up the secrecy laws in very many particulars. It gave ministers powers they've not previously possessed. Anything which they describe as being concerned with the security services will automatically be subject to criminal prosecution.
Douglas Hurd says the critics are mistaken.
I think we've actually made public more information, say, about security and intelligence than any government has ever done before. What we're now doing is saying that protection of the law should only apply to that bit of government information which really does need to be kept secret.
The undisputed world heavyweight boxing champion Mike Tyson says he's quitting the ring. Just one day after his latest dramatic title defense, he says in an American newspaper article that he won't fight again because of press slurs on his wife and mother-in-law. Tyson, who's won his last 35 bouts, was due to fight Frank Bruno in London in September. On Monday, he knocked out Michael Spinks in 91 seconds in New Jersey. He picked up more than $22 million for the fight and first hinted at retirement then.
After this fight, and I wasn't really appreciative of what you guys, quote, the reporters did to me. Building up to this fight, you tried to embarrass me, you tried to embarrass my family, you tried to disgrace us. And as far as I know, this might be my last fight.
Britain's oldest film studios at Elstree have been sold off and they're to close in October. The studio head, Andrew Mitchell, said it was another nail in the coffin of the British film industry. Elstree rose to fame in the 1930s when Alfred Hitchcock started directing there. In recent years, it's won a reputation for producing high-tech movies like Star Wars and the Indiana Jones films. The Northern Ireland Secretary, Mr. Tom King, has told MPs to expect information about selling off the Harland and Wolff shipyard very shortly. Mr. King reaffirmed the government's determination to privatise the Belfast shipbuilders. He wouldn't say that he'd found a buyer for the yard, but he said he hoped to make an announcement about its future in the next couple of days. A report this morning says Harlands is being offered to the Indian shipping millionaire, Mr. Ravi Tikku. Mr. King also told MPs that terrorists in Northern Ireland are preparing to intensify their campaign using powerful new weapons with a capacity well in excess of those used in the past. Mr. King said the prayers of the House were with the schoolgirl who was seriously injured in a bomb attack on a school bus. 14-year-old Gillian Latimer is still on a life support machine. Her friends who escaped injury have appealed for the violence to end.
It takes everybody to stand out and protest against it. That's why we're doing this. We don't want to do these interviews, but we feel that some good has to come out of this tragedy. And then the next time men think of planting bombs, they'll think again, because it mightn't work the way they want it to work. It might bring us closer together. That's what we hope anyway.
The Merseyside coroner issued a warning against head-banging, violent shaking of the head, at the inquest on a man of 20 who died of a brain hemorrhage after a head-banging session at a heavy metal disco. The coroner, Mr. Roy Barter, said the fan, Christopher Skellies, had brain injuries like those inflicted on babies shaken in child abuse cases. Head-banging was a way in which young people let off steam in an apparently harmless way, he said, but the death gave cause for public concern. The singer George Michael had an operation to remove a cyst from his vocal cords in a private London clinic last night. According to a friend, the operation was very successful. Michael's been told he mustn't speak at all for a fortnight, but a doctor said he'll sing like a bird when he's well again. He's expected to stay in hospital for a few days and then convalesce in Switzerland. We'll take a break. Later in the programme, we'll have reports from America, business and sport. But in part 2, it'll be ITN's World News.
Refreshing change. Forget the wet and get into the dry. Refreshingly dry Blackthorn cider.
When a man you've never met before suddenly gives you flowers, that's on fire. The sensual new fragrance from Impulse. Men just can't help acting on it.
Changes.
Change your style, salon style. Hold your style, versatile. With Vidal Sassoon, you've never been in better shape.
Piermont. Sparkling spring water with apple. It's the balance that's so refreshing.
Hello again, it's 11 minutes past 5 and that's time for ITN's World News. First seen by viewers in Europe and Japan last night. In this programme, a special report on the start of the public hearings into the Pentagon bribes scandal. First, though, ITN's international service had coverage of the second day of the Communist Party conference in Moscow. Moscow party delegates openly criticise Kremlin leadership. Buerta warns Angolan peace talks at risk. Baby kidnapped and sold is back with her parents. The compact disc, can cheap versions deteriorate? Hello, I'm John Suchet with the World News. Delegates to the Communist Party Congress in Moscow have openly criticised the Soviet leadership. In scenes unique in the Soviet Union's history, one party member called for reforms within the Kremlin itself. Mr. Gorbachev, sitting just behind, said he agreed. In another unprecedented move, delegates voted for an investigation into allegations that some party officials had taken bribes. Although much of the day's debate was held in private, some of the most critical speeches were broadcast on Soviet television. ITN's Moscow correspondent Ian Glover-James sent this report.
Beneath the domes of St. Basil's, 5,000 delegates trudged into Red Square at dawn. These are historic days for the Soviet Communist Party. Lenin's revolution expired in the 20s. Now Stalin's being blamed for much of what's gone wrong since. Mr. Gorbachev wants a complete overhaul of the Soviet Communist Party. The conference must decide whether officials should serve only 2 or 3 terms at their desks. Most Soviet leaders have died in office. Today, leading Gorbachev men fought against any trend for them to cling on to power.
If Stalin retired in 1934, before he killed Kirov, and if Brezhnev retired in 74, our country could overcome very, very many difficulties.
Delegate Kalashnikov asked why ministers couldn't handle the economy properly. Mr. Gorbachev cut in, saying they've got to work harder. Yes, we all need some personal perestroika, said the loyal Mr. Kalashnikov. Absolutely right, said Gorbachev. Then party number 2, Igor Ligachev, stepped forward. Everyone's for perestroika, but some, like Ligachev, aren't sure how far or how fast things should change. But the delegates aren't slow in debating the new ideas. Political exchanges like this haven't been seen for decades and never in public. Ian Glover-James, ITN, Moscow.
Romania has ordered the closure of a Hungarian consulate and expelled its staff in a dramatic worsening of relations between the two countries. Romania's President Nicolae Ceausescu announced the closure after an unprecedented anti-Romanian protest in the Hungarian capital Budapest. The demonstration by around 50,000 Hungarians was against President Ceausescu's plans to destroy some 7,000 villages in Romania. The villages are in a region that used to be part of Hungary and where many ethnic Hungarians still live. ITN's Fiona Lini reports.
It was an angry Nicolae Ceausescu who addressed the Romanian parliament on this latest friction between his country and Hungary. He said he rejected any attempts to interfere in the internal affairs of Romania. He also hinted that Romania may withdraw its ambassador in Hungary. But the Hungarian parliament was concentrating on other matters. Gathered together for their first session were a new generation of communist leaders. They came to power in a major party reshuffle last month. There was voting on ambitious reform plans aimed at introducing greater democracy. But a special report on the troubles with Romania was postponed. Monday's mass protest brought to a climax years of strained relations over ethnic Hungarians in Romania. And this is what it's all about, Small Hungarian farming communities in Transylvania will be destroyed when villages are demolished and replaced by large agro-industrial centres. And the region of Transylvania, the homeland of the fictional vampire Dracula, will be changed beyond recognition.
South Africa has warned that Angolan peace talks are under threat because of increased fighting in southern Angola. The South African government says its troops killed more than 300 Cuban and Angolan troops during a fierce battle there on Monday. It happened around the Kalwekwe Dam near Angola's border with Namibia. South Africa's Foreign Minister Pick Botha told a news conference that the renewed fighting proved Cuban forces were now on the offensive. 12 South African soldiers were also reported killed. Angola has strongly denied South Africa's claims. A baby Brazilian girl has been reunited with her parents 2 years after she was kidnapped. 2-year-old Bruna Vasconcelos was snatched from her home and sold to a childless Israeli couple. The couple did not know she was stolen. But an Israeli court ordered Bruna to be returned to her natural parents in Brazil.
Bruna was kidnapped from her home in Brazil when she was only 4 months old. She arrived at Heathrow in London with her parents on their way from Israel back home to Brazil. It took nearly 2 years of searching to locate her after she was kidnapped by a baby smuggling ring. A television crew making a documentary on the Brazilian baby trade helped them to find her. The Israeli couple who adopted her claim they didn't know she was stolen. The 2-year-old girl has become quite a celebrity in Brazil. The government has formed a committee to pay for her upbringing and education.
This way. Thank you.
In Brazil itself, there were celebrations when the Israeli court decision was announced. These people heard the news in the local radio station, close to where a number of babies have gone missing.
A manufacturer of compact discs is warning that some discs could deteriorate and become unplayable after just a few years. The company says the metal in some of the cheaper discs can be damaged by ink used to print the labels. But the claim has led to a major row in the music industry. One of the largest manufacturers, Sony, says it is completely untrue and has been made in a desperate bid for commercial gain.
Compact discs cost around twice as much as vinyl LPs, but with a promise of everlasting perfection, consumers have turned to the new medium in force. Now, however, that dream has been slightly tarnished, with tests showing that some compact discs can, after all, lose their quality over a long period of time. It's all to do with the aluminium reflective surface of the disc, which is scanned by laser to produce the sound. If the glue binding the disc together isn't airtight, or ink from the printing on the surface eats through the protective lacquer coating, oxidization can set in. In real terms, that means metal corrosion, leading to a reduction in quality. But tests have shown that less than 5% of the world's CDs have shown any noticeable signs of degrading at all, and none of them in under 5 years.
There's absolutely no need really for the public to worry. Just be aware that, let the buyer beware, you get what you pay for.
Production methods are improving all the time, so it's now estimated that only about 1% of the compact discs being made around the world will show any defects at all in less than 10 years. But as the current price war hots up, manufacturers won't be able to ignore this timely warning that they can't cut corners if their records are to stand the test of time. Jeremy Hands, ITN, Central London.
Business news. There's been a dramatic fall in the price of gold, but the dollar rose sharply on the international markets. With the details and a roundup of Wednesday's closing prices, here's Helen Cameron.
Gold prices fell partly because falling grain prices led investors to be less worried about inflation. It closed down $9.50 an ounce, its lowest since March this year. The dollar continued to gain on the money markets. At the end of Wednesday's trading, it was up against the West German mark by 2.25 pfennigs. It was also up against the Japanese currency by 2.8 yen. And the pound was down against the dollar. It fell 1.25 cents. Shares in Tokyo were up. The Nikkei Dow gained more than 209 points. But in London, the Financial Times 100 index was down 1.8. The Frankfurt Commerzbank index was up 11 points, and the Amsterdam General was also up 4 points. The oil markets were influenced by a decision by a major producer to ignore OPEC quotas. The United Arab Emirates is to raise its output to 1.5 million barrels a day. That's 20% more than the OPEC ruling and raises fears of an oversupplied market. The news sent prices down. North Sea Brent blend oil closed down 10 cents a barrel.
The business news. In France, Prime Minister Michel Rocard has made an impassioned plea for the French Parliament to unite around his minority socialist government. Monsieur Rocard was giving his first policy speech to the newly elected National Assembly in Paris. He also called for the reintroduction of a wealth tax, but he said it was not a revenge on the rich.
This month's elections to the National Assembly left the Socialists 13 seats short of an overall majority. So, in need of extra parliamentary votes, Michel Rocard has designed his new programme to have a wide political appeal. He said what France needed was day-to-day democracy and united efforts to improve everyday problems. He also pledged help to the poor and unemployed. Rocard will particularly look for National Assembly support from the former Conservative Prime Minister Raymond Barre. Two of Barre's colleagues have now taken ministerial jobs in the new Rocard cabinet. Barre is also the potential leader of a new centre group, the UDC, which could form an alliance with the Socialists.
The Greek terrorist organisation known as November the 17th says it planted the bomb that killed the American defence attaché to Greece. The group said the bomb attack was a protest against peace talks between Turkey and Greece. American Navy Captain William Nordine died on Tuesday when his armour-plated car was blown up in Athens. In a letter to a Greek newspaper, the terrorist group also said it would continue to kill Americans until the United States withdrew its bases from Greece. Now, our special report. The first public hearings into the alleged scandal over the purchase of Pentagon weapons have just started in Washington. The scandal centres on allegations that top Defence Department officials received illegal payments for information on government weapons contracts. Investigators say as many as 85 contracts worth tens of billions of dollars could be involved. ITN's Tim Ewart reports.
The statistics of the Pentagon can seem overwhelming. Along its 17 miles of corridors are the offices of 24,000 people who administer an annual budget of $285,000 million. Of that, $160,000 million is used to buy arms and equipment, a figure roughly equivalent to the gross national product of Spain. The administration says that in such a large basket, there are bound to be some bad apples.
You can't be down there watching several million people in the total of all of the companies and of the Defense Department every day and what they're doing.
But Pentagon critics say the whole system is rotten.
It's much more than bad apples in the basket. Our system is corrupt. We've got profits driving our buildup of weapons in the United States. The drive for profits has gone way beyond any sensible system of procuring weapons based on our military need.
America has experienced its biggest ever peacetime military buildup under the Reagan administration. Defense spending has doubled in 7 years. Accusations of waste and corruption are nothing new. The $600 lavatory seat became the symbol of Pentagon profligacy in 1985. That year, the president appointed a special commission to investigate what was going on.
Waste and fraud by corporate contractors are more than a ripoff of the taxpayer. They're a blow to the security of our nation.
Some changes to the procurement system were recommended, but not enough to inhibit the apparently vast level of fraud now uncovered by the FBI in an operation codenamed Ill Wind. This man is emerging as the central figure in the scandal, Melvin Paisley, former Assistant Secretary of the Navy. He left last year to become a private consultant. It's alleged Paisley took bribes while in office, and it's suggested he may have helped McDonnell Douglas win a Navy aircraft contract that could be worth $42 billion. The transition to the private sector by officials like Paisley is at the heart of this affair. They're known as Beltway bandits because they favor suburban office blocks near the Pentagon along Washington's Ring Road. Some earn $2,000 a day from military contractors eager to benefit from their expertise and contacts. In a recent 2-year period, nearly 6,000 people left the Department of Defense to work for private contractors. Supporters of the system say it oils the wheels of bureaucracy. Opponents claim it greases the palms of the unscrupulous.
We pay our retired two-star generals and admirals about $60,000 a year. That's enough to live adequately on for the rest of their lives. If they want to go to work for a company, let them go to work for somebody that's not selling weapons to the Pentagon.
50 consultants and 20 contractors have been named in the investigation. 100 arms contracts are being examined. The equipment involved includes the F-18 aircraft, a radar testing device, a Navy artillery fire control system and anti-submarine devices, and even the B-2 stealth bomber, so secret it's never been seen in public. It's left industry spokesmen anxiously trying to head off what they fear will be more red tape around the existing 30,000 pages of federal procurement regulations.
You still have people that rob banks. We don't close the banks. You don't change the system. And we had the Wall Street scandal with insider trading. It looks like that may be what this is. You didn't close Wall Street. It's still functioning. I think they've restored their integrity.
But there's more than financial corruption here. There's also the whiff of political scandal. A number of senior Pentagon officials, past and present, are under scrutiny, and the shadow of suspicion has fallen across the former Navy Secretary, John Lehman. He was appointed by the President, and that's added an extra dimension of gravity to the affair.
The American people are pretty trusting of government. And particularly the Department of Defense. And they want to have a strong national defense, and they're willing to listen to the experts about the fact that we need these systems which are prohibitively expensive. And once you lose that trust, then it's going to be very, very difficult to regain it. I mean, we're still paying a price in this country for what the government did during the war in Vietnam, the Watergate episode. And I'm afraid this will carry on in the national security establishment, you know, for a decade or more.
There have also been allegations involving Caspar Weinberger, Defense Secretary until last year. Allegations all too familiar in the Reagan administration that he wasn't in control. Congress has reacted swiftly. The first of a series of public hearings into the scandal began in the House of Representatives Armed Services Committee today. There were suggestions that some congressmen were involved in the fraud, but investigators say no one on Capitol Hill has been questioned yet. If there is a political price, it'll be paid by Vice President George Bush in the election campaign. Pentagate, as it's called, is not as serious as the Iran-Contra scandal, but it will add to the list of administration embarrassments. For Mr. Bush, behind in the polls and on the defensive, that's bad enough. Tim Ewart, ITN, Washington.
Our special report. Now, a look ahead to some events happening on Thursday. The dissident French Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre is to ordain 4 new bishops in Switzerland in defiance of the Vatican. NATO Secretary-General Lord Carrington formally steps down at the end of his 4-year term. He is succeeded by West German Defense Minister Manfred Werner. And the Vietnamese military command leaves Kampuchea. Some 50,000 Vietnamese are scheduled to pull out by the end of this year. And that's the world news. I'll be back at the same time tomorrow. Goodbye.
In part 3, we'll have television news reports in overnight from America. We'll have yesterday's play at Wimbledon and the early business news. Immediately after this break, though, I'll have the morning's headlines so far.
Shoulders. I didn't know you had dandruff. Shh.
I don't. Head and shoulders?
I didn't know you had dandruff. I don't.
Tests prove it. With ordinary medicated shampoo, dandruff can still be there. But with Head and Shoulders used regularly, it's completely clear.
Head and shoulders? I didn't know you had dandruff. I don't.
So don't have dandruff. Have great-looking hair.
The French may, on occasions, find some of our ways a little confusing. But when it comes to fruit yogurt, you can always tell it's Nouvelle. Nouvelle from Chambourcy.
When you go to sleep, don't fall prey to the nighttime terrors like ghouls and spectres. And spots. Spots just love the night, but they hate Clearasil because it removes the oil and dirt ordinary washing leaves behind. Clearasil lotion cleanses pore deep with an antibacterial action. And so does Clearasil milk for combination skin. Use their cleansing power mornings and at night, and you'll help prevent spots going bump in the night.
Again, it's 28 minutes to 6, and if you've just joined us, you're watching the morning news from ITN. The headlines so far. There's been mixed reaction to the government's proposed changes to the Official Secrets Act. The reforms were more sweeping than many had expected, but Labour's Roy Hattersley said they had hardened up the secrecy laws. The Home Secretary, Douglas Hurd, said the White Paper, which does away with the catch-all, Section 2 of the Act, made public more information than ever before. Mike Tyson, the undisputed world heavyweight boxing champion, says he's retired. He told an American newspaper that slurs against his wife and mother-in-law by some reporters have made him decide to quit while he's on top. On Monday, he earned $22 million when he knocked out Michael Spinks in just 91 seconds. And the singer George Michael has had a cyst removed from his vocal cords. According to a friend, the operation in a private London clinic was very successful. The former Wham star's been told he can't talk for a fortnight, but he's going to be able to sing again like a bird. Now for our daily look at some of the news on American television. The top story there is the continuing crisis of the drought. Crops are under an increasing threat, and now food prices are on the rise. And there's a report on the man saved from death row because he was a teenager when he committed murder. But first, on America's cable news network, the drought emergency.
Good evening. There was some rain relief today, but forecasters say the drought's not going away. The National Weather Service forecasts another month of hot, dry weather across the Midwest. And that means more damage to the nation's corn, soybean, and wheat crops. The drought's already pushing food prices higher. The price of grain and other raw material jumped more than 3.5% in June. And those prices are up nearly 7% over the same month last year. The Farm Belt and northern plains have been hit hardest by the drought so far, but forecasters expect the dry weather to spread deeper into the southeast as the summer wears on. Our coverage begins with CNN's John Holloman in Washington.
When it started raining in the Midwest on Tuesday, some farmers breathed a sigh of relief. They hoped the most severe early summer drought since the Dust Bowl was ending. But the government's long-range weather forecast threw sand on those hopes.
These outlooks really do not in themselves break the drought in the Midwest. That is the Ohio Valley-centered area. They would tend to ease things in the northern plains given some time.
This map forecasts the chance of rain through September, traditionally the driest time of the year. It shows only a 55% chance of rain above normal in the drought-stricken breadbasket. Farmers say if there's no rain between now and mid-July, they'll lose half their crops. Gilman says that rain is not in the cards.
Our judgment is away from that, that the odds are tipped towards the dry side, not the wet side.
To illustrate the drought, the Weather Service showed a satellite photograph of the eastern Midwest. It was taken June 12th. The brown areas are those where nothing is producing chlorophyll. In other words, it's dying because of the drought. For comparison, look at an identical picture taken at this time 2 years ago, another drought period in the U.S. It shows more brown in the southeast, but much less in the grain belt. One reason for the drought could be the split in the jet stream. Normally, it moves through the middle of the U.S., but now the stream is split, with one stream in Canada and another in Mexico. Because of the pattern, the next week will be just as dry as the rest of the summer has been. In the face of this, some in Congress are introducing legislation to help.
We can no longer delay the